Yeah, so my topic today is a vision of faith. Obviously, and Happy New Year to everybody. This is a powerful time. Um, just because chronologically we're now calling ourselves 2021, it was yesterday and it was the day before and it was the day before and it's going to be tomorrow. And what's really changed? Well, some things have changed. And one of the things we know that is very powerful for us, which really could be present in our lives every day, every minute, but particularly right now, as we know the turning of the year is a time where we really get our juices going, perhaps about our future and our new year and our intentions. And that's good. It's good. It's a powerful time to set intentions and goals and do our vision boards and all that stuff. But I want to bring us back to, and perhaps this talk for the next 20 minutes or so will in a way be like a living meditation for you. I want us to be present. I think it was when Jacqueline was speaking about the death of her father that, tears were coming to my eyes. I mean, as beings, we are alive beings. We know we have a spiritual body, which is an infinite and eternal body. And for those of us that are spiritualists, believing in life after life, that can be a real source of comfort. As I was thinking about this talk, one of the talks I've given before was, tools that I use in my own life to create my serenity. I worked for many years creating more serenity in my life. Because, we also have a human body, the humanness of us that has an emotional body, a mental body, a physical body, and relational bodies, and all these parts of our lives that we need to manage, and hopefully feel good. But because in our spirituality, the part of us that's infinite and eternal, there's no friction, there's no death, there's no having to make money, there's no birth death cycle, there's none of that. That's the oneness. That's where we can really rest in our serenity. But in our humanness, as we know, we live literally, these human bodies are a temporary experience, and hopefully it will be a good 80 or 100 or maybe more years for many of us. But even this planet itself is a biological organism and is temporary. That's a little bit of a mind expansion, but it's one of the tools that I've used for myself to remind myself of what is happening here, what's going on here, and it helps me anchor into my humanity, which again, sometimes is not always comfortable. We've just, as many of us know, we've had a very challenging year, even if parts of that have been really good for us. And we're still probably going to have a pretty challenging 2021, even though lots of good things are happening, the vaccine's coming out, we've shifted our lives in lots of ways. But I believe we have some, we have some real challenges ahead of us. But in consciousness, challenge is a high vibration, because without challenge, we don't grow. And there are principles that say you're either living or you're dying. You're either growing or you're stagnating. And again, as I say these things, I want you to really do your best to relax your mind and not bring on any guilt. And if you do bring in any guilt, don't get any on the person next to you. But so anyway, just be gentle with yourselves. Remind ourselves we're all doing the best we can. And, we have that loving part of ourselves that can bring love to ourselves in any moment. I really invite you to do that. I'm a metaphysical teacher, and I was born with kind of a natural metaphysical mind. I remember being like 8 years old, riding in the back of the family station wagon, saying to myself, why are we here? We could just as easily not be, but and there's a part of me that I certainly don't have all the answers for what is this and what is it that created this. I mean, the best I can do at the moment is there's what I call an infinite eternal spirit energy that dreamed up not only this amazing planet and our solar system and this universe, but I mean, it's an intelligence that continues to boggle my mind and bring me to experiences of awe. I'm a big Facebook person. I love looking at Facebook and all the things about the animals and the butterflies. And I saw a murmuration, with the birds do that thing in the sky, a murmuration. I saw one of those in real life yesterday. There was one up in Marin like a couple of weeks ago that somebody put a video on Facebook. I was driving yesterday and I actually saw one of those in real life. And I mean, these just amazing miracles of life, the butterfly wings. I mean, all these, some of you have probably seen that film on Netflix called The Octopus Teacher. I mean, some of these incredible, just the things about, and think the intelligence that dreamed this up. I mean, what is that? And it's in a way actually not anything that our minds can in some ways grasp. We have to go to higher elevations of vibration on our mind to even conceive of it and imagine it. But what, as we know, certainly we don't live our whole lives from our mind, and we wouldn't want to. Our mind is a dualistic mechanism. It's very powerful. It's needed. But when we drop into our hearts, when we drop into that, fourth chakra, the great balancer, 3 chakras below, 3 chakras above, the heart is in the middle. It's the great balancer. And when we really feel even the hard stuff, the grief or whatever, it grounds us because it's real. And it's like it finds a place to rest. And that's an emotional tool that we can use to help create serenity and quality of life. So let's take a breath together, because breath is also good to relax our physical system and bring well-being to our system, and remind ourselves that if you believe, one of my hypnotherapy teachers used to just always say, all is well. All is well. So one of the things we know about the mind is it's a dualistic mechanism. And it must be, because without the dual, we come from the spiritual oneness, but once we come into physicality, our mind is a dualistic mechanism. And it must be, because without the duality, without the contrast, we can't experience. We can't have this human experience. If we don't know hot, we don't know cold. If we don't know pain, we don't know pleasure. So, we must have that. But we want to be careful to not get, some of us can easily get trapped in the negativity. Whether it be pain or suffering or just even negative thinking. And we have the ability, in the work that I do, that I learned from another teacher, our definition of free will is our ability to place, remove, and shift our attention. And we can do that, and sometimes easier than others. But just because our mind thinks a thought, as we know, doesn't make it true. And that's part of what I am bringing here in this talk around, especially here we are on the first Sunday of 2021, going into this future year, perhaps even just this next week, and then this next month, and then this next few months, getting the vaccine out. And some people may not even want to take the vaccine. I mean, we've certainly got some more challenges ahead. But to remind ourselves that and some people don't know this, maybe some of you do know this and are very skilled, but we have the ability to choose our thoughts. It doesn't mean that thoughts, just because we don't choose them, go away. My approach is that it's what I call the menu of life. Every possible experience and thought and thing we can conceive is on the menu of life. But just because it's on the menu doesn't mean we need to order it and ingest it and digest it and live out of it. So we have the ability to choose our thoughts, and we do it all the time. And I invite you, if you don't already, keep practicing recognizing that if your mind brings up a thought, whether you're empowering it or not, okay? And we can pick up our attention and put our attention on what we do want. And I really invite us to keep doing that more and more. Let's take another breath. So one of the other tools that I use for my own sense of serenity and visioning is I happen to like astrology. I'm not super big on it. I'm not an astrologist myself, but there's some wonderful things that have been out recently. And one of the ones, as we know, is that we're in what's called the age of Aquarius. I mean, back when I was a young one in the 60s and the 70s, I used to hear about the age of Aquarius. I think, that I guess the movie Hair and the play, that they were singing about the age of Aquarius. Somehow I thought it was back then, but I guess we're in it now. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but there's a prophecy that says Aquarius will rule in 2021. February 2021 will have 7 planets in the sign of Aquarius. The last time this happened was the Dark Ages. And the last time this happened, the Dark Ages ended, and the Renaissance, which was a time of cultural rebirth, began. The time of plagues ended and a spirit shift began. So starting February 2021, a revolution of mind and spirit will begin. Well, that sounds like good news to me. I like that, I also, the last number of years, have been participating with groups that are experiencing what we call the evolutionary impulse. And there's lots of writers that write about this. Maybe you've heard of Barbara Marx Hubbard. She has some books out there talking about the evolutionary impulse. And, if we think about spiritually, that as beings, if you believe that spiritually we are really a oneness, like a one energy, we look like we're separate beings here in our separate physical bodies and our separate lives and our separate personalities. But on a spiritual level, we're really all cut from the same cloth. We're a oneness. But because we've come into differentiation, because we've come into, Mary and James and Dee Dee and, each of us individually, it looks like we're separate beings. And but the evolutionary impulse is that we're being drawn back together. If the nature of the universe is that it was a oneness that split out through the Big Bang or whatever, that eventually that it's coming back together. And it may not be that it's a one-time thing, that it's split off and it's going to come back together and then what? Creation is finished? I don't know. It's going to be probably eons. But we also do know that life is an expression of expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction. So, so if we're being all drawn back together, there's a nature of work that's going on now called the we space, that literally evolution is not even only happening through us individually, but is literally happening in the space between us. So this also calls us forth and can inspire us, and many of us do, just particularly in our basic human actions and our relational interactions, but even on a more global level, like to pay attention to the energy and the quality of being in our simple daily connections. Many of us practice, again, our own principles of serenity, our practices of serenity, and it's hard right now to walk down the street and smile at people because we're all wearing masks, basically. But really to quiet ourselves and become present and pay attention to the quality of presence that we bring to each other, making eye contact, and recognizing that literally when two or more human beings, or when two human beings come together and look into each other's eyes, something happens, something gets activated. There's also, so literally evolution is happening not only in us individually, but in the space between us. There's some of I like the website called Sparks of Divine Light Healing that puts out these astrological sayings throughout the month or so. And one of the things that it had said just recently was, the planet is continuing to elevate in vibration and frequency. I think many of us can feel that. I know I am. That's why for some of us, as weird and challenging as 2020 was, in some ways it was very growth provoking, and a lot of wonderful benefits came from it. So the planet is continuing to elevate in vibration and frequency, which of course means so are we. There are lots of DNA activations occurring, and a lot that will continue to be purged and released. So this is a good time to be focusing on the new year ahead, and it's the perfect time to be setting some intentions and goals, as these are amazing energies to manifest with. So that's another thing that, I know for myself, as some of you know, I identified, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago that I had some low-level depression that I had probably had all my life. And when I was able to start naming that and owning that and coming out of the shame of that, I started working with and investigating what is this? Where did this come from? And I have done that work, and I know on a mental level where it came from. I know how it manifests physically, and I've transformed most of it. I've got a little bit more to go, but I've transformed most of it. But one of the things was, I also know about myself that I have a disappointment issue and all these. And one of the places that what I call my depression manifested is in the places in life that as a young child, I felt like I was told no, like you can't do this. And partly for me, it was a gender issue, because I was born in a female body in the 60s, there weren't even organized sports for girls back then. And part of who I am was an athlete. So all the places I was told no, my system began registering that as well. I guess it's just no use. And I recognized the place where that was a depressive energy. And I just kind of just kept my energy low, and but I was also angry, and I didn't know how to express that anger, and I had all that energy stuck. So anyway, all this stuff, but now that I've released a lot of that, but I have had to go through these stages, and I'm still working on it, of how to give myself permission to imagine a better quality of life and then actually have it. And that can be challenging, but I'm doing it and it's working. And people who know me and around me, I'm happier. I can actually now say, I'm happy. I would have to wake up out of bed and I'd check in with myself. I'm like, I'm happy. And it sounds silly, but it was a revelation. It was a newness for me. I had to declare that. I had to acknowledge it. And now I am happy, and I'm happier, and I'm getting happier. And to me, it's not just about happy. I'm just happy. It doesn't everybody want to just be happy. It's not just it's like, I also want to be satisfied. I want to have a quality of life. I fortunately have a wonderful quality of life. I've had wonderful work, and I've served a lot of people, and I make a lot of difference in a lot of people. I was with some clients yesterday. Have said to me, "You saved our marriage." I do relationship coaching and believe me, it's quite gratifying. I've literally had people say I don't really work with suicidal people, but have saved people's lives. And I don't say that like, oh yeah, good. It's like, wow, I get to do that. And it's not that's not what fuels me every day. I'm just doing the best I can, but I'm saying this so that any of us in whatever area, whether it's depression or a physical malady or anything we want in life, to improve our quality of life, that it's possible. And it's not just about getting more money or buying things, as we know. We are beings on a soul journey, and this is powerful stuff. So, but I'm just, my own little testimony about it's possible. So let's take another breath. And the whole thing of like that, are literally even like right now, our DNA is activated. Evolution is happening through us. The fact that there are, how many of us are there here today? My screen changed, so I can't actually see it. So there are almost 40 of us here on this call. There's something energetically that happens because we're all here, each of us, and our collective synergy. Okay. So just a few more minutes here in terms of, some of this evolutionary impulse. There's, what's fascinating to me too, as I study some of the evolutionary progression, as we know physically, we've been on an evolutionary projection. Assuming you believe in evolution, on a physical level, we evolved out of Australopithecus. Okay. We evolved into Homo habilis. We evolved into Homo erectus. We evolved into Homo neanderthalis. We evolved into Homo sapiens sapiens. Well, there's a writer called Jeremy Rifkin once who wrote that we're coming into the time where, as human beings, we are evolving into Homoempathicus. We have been learning to open our heart spaces and have more kindness for each other. We're not, Homo neanderthalis anymore, where it's just like kill or be killed, you eat me or I eat you. We are now, fortunately, most of us don't physically prey on each other. And hopefully most of us, if we're not already, need to do our work to see, are we emotionally preying on anyone? Let's be careful of that. And, and now Barbara Marx Hubbard writes about Homo amore universalis. Human beings of universal love. I mean, isn't that cool? I mean, people writing books about this stuff. I didn't even know, at first when I saw homo, what is this about, queerness? That's where my mind first went. It's like, what is she talking about? But I love this, Homo amore universalis. And you can certainly go to YouTube and find Barbara Marx Hubbard's work on YouTube, and she has books on this stuff. But let's sit with that for a minute. We are, if you want to identify that way, even if you just breathe into Homoempathicus. How cool is that? Much less Homo amore universalis. We are human beings of universal love. And we pretty much know that, at least in communities like this, we talk about this. We feel into this. We know as spiritualists that, you know, there is life after life, that life goes on, that being goes on, that essentially it is love. It's the quality of love and oneness. And I'm grateful to be able to give this talk today so that we can just keep giving ourselves permission to expand our minds and keep opening our hearts to who are we? What's going on here? And not just to ask those questions, but one of the tools too is when your mind asks questions, answer it, because sometimes answering the questions your mind asks is a good medicine. And sometimes the question is, well, I'm not really sure. Let me sit with my friend and look into their eyes, or let me read a good book. There's lots of different things we can do to keep bringing serenity to our lives, because with all the challenges we're having culturally, with COVID and this coming year and people being out of work and the environment and all this stuff, let's remind us that we are infinite, eternal, spiritual beings with big hearts, big hearts that can really make a difference. We know from the work of heart math. They used to think the mind was the master organ of the body, the brain was the master organ. Now we know the heart is the master organ of the body. The vibrations of the heart are much stronger, actually, than that of the brain. Quite interesting. And it's really where we all connect. So my message here again for our visions of faith for this future year, is to be kind and gentle with yourself. I have a phrase that anytime my system feels discord or fear, I take a breath, I relax my system, and I bring love to it. Typically the places that I feel fear or hurt, it's like my inner child is feeling fear or hurt. And like I'm not a physical mother, but if I were to bring a scared child into my arms and just soothe them and remind them that they're beautiful and they're okay and they're wonderful, just bring love to it. Anytime you have any kind of sense of disease or discord, take a breath, open your heart, and bring love to it. Let's continue to do that for each other in this coming year, and certainly send out our visions of love and continued health and functionality for all human beings in this coming year of 2021. So thank you so much for listening to me. I hope something I shared and said today was of value. Let's take a nice big breath again into our hearts, and happy 2021.